Welcome back, folks. MTG Joe here. Today we're doing another installment of the weekly meta breakdown where we look at the top performing decks on the MTG Arena ladder. This particular video is for the Explorer Best of One format. We have all the other formats in the specific video each week, provided there's data in the playlist if you want to check that out. We are looking specifically at, as I mentioned, the Explorer Best of One format. I will mention towards the end of the video about a tournament if you want to play in for real cash prizes that's free. So we'll highlight at the end of the video. As always, we get the data from TapGG, which you see on the screen. Companion tool, as I've mentioned before, tracks win rates, loss rates, a whole bunch of cool functionality, free to use a whole bunch of it. Link is in the video description down below. I'll paste all these deck lists in the description so you can copy and paste them for those new to the sequence or to these videos. And as always, if you can, and if you like this and you haven't done so, like, comment, subscribe, all free and easy ways to help out the channel. Pandering aside, let's jump into it. The September 27th to October 4th, I can't talk today, Platinum to Mythic rank, 32,000 matches of Explorer for the Best of One format. And the top deck is the rat itself, Greasefang, Greasefang Okiba Boss. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, if you played Explorer, this is pretty much like the boogeyman of the format. This deck is looking to self-mill or throw cards into your graveyard, and particularly put Parhelion into your graveyard, which is the best hit, but you also have vehicles in Sky Sovereign as well as Eska's Chariot for more of a fair game. With Okiba, with Greasefang Okiba Boss, you reanimate the Parhelion, give it haste, attack in for 13 damage. Technically, you can do this as early as turn 2 if you mill both a Parhelion and a Greasefang with Stitcher Supplier, and then reanimating it on turn 2 with Can't Stay Awake. This deck's super resilient, can kill out of like nowhere or just put them in such a behind state, and is really kind of the deck that forces people to play around. I'm very surprised they left like this deck around when Winota was stated as developing insurmountable board states based on removal check. This is pretty much the same thing. Can get around graveyard hate. You can throw things in at instant speed. Can discard with Liliana. It has hand disruption as well. This version's playing 6 discard spells, so it's really kind of going all in, hating out your opponent's hand and trying to combo off as early as possible. The next deck is Mono Red Aggro. I will mention if I'll paste each of these gameplay videos that I have as well if you want to see some of these decks in action. With Mono Red, we tried this out, a very similar version this week, seeing how it played. So this was an Annex Cleave version. I've been kind of hesitant against the Annex Cleave version. I don't think Annex does enough on its own without Ember Cleave, and most of the time if you're attacking it with Ember Cleave, you're probably winning those games. Annex on its own doesn't immediately impact the board. Most of the removal in the format, at least white-based, is Exile, so it doesn't really matter. You'll get the occasional Supreme Verdict, but at least in my instances, I don't run into too much Azorious Control in the ladder, but even in that case, I prefer Ferocidon. It shuts off the Angels deck. It does a bunch of incidental damage. Menace is also relevant in terms of attacking and blocking. But largely, this deck is very strong, provided you're not running into Greasefang. I lost every matchup with Greasefang. I had good hands. It just didn't matter. I couldn't get through. You're playing a couple Lightning Strikes, but even with that, they have Can't Stay Awake. They have other Greasefangs, so you might delay it a turn, but then you're also in this awkward situation where do you advance your board state or do you just constantly hold up 2 mana? It's just not consistent enough to kind of deal with the Greasefang deck. This version's playing some Soulscar Mage as a 1-drop. The version I was playing Fervent Champion. The Fanatical Firebrands seem reasonable, and I would probably play 4 of these over the Fervent. Wasn't thrilled with Fervent Champion. Honestly, even in place of Soulscar Mage, like there's some non-creatures here, but I think largely even just doing Phoenix Chick to go over the top. Flying is quite relevant in this format, just to kind of go over ground blockers that would normally get chumped. But my thoughts on Mono Red here, 23 lands is probably suitable for this deck. Selesnya Angels. So another pillar of the format with the life gain elements. This version is using a Johnny as kind of a mirror breaker. We have Fateful Absence and 1 March of the Otherworldly Light. This is probably a concession again to Greasefang. I think largely instead of March, I'd probably play just 2 Fateful Absence. You need 4 mana for this to hit Greasefang, which again is quite taxing on your mana base. While this does have some flexibility to hit artifacts and enchantments, you're not too concerned about artifacts and enchantments beyond something like 9 lives, which you're probably just losing that game anyways. But I think just 2 mana is just a clean answer with that. A bunch of ways to gain life here, and your ideal state is to gain 5 or more a turn with Resplendent Angel to make more angels. This particular version, you're playing some Emeria calls, Collected Company. I'll also tried a version this week with Sarah Paragon. Was an interesting consideration to play. I was playing it in lieu of the Speaker of the Heavens, and instead playing the 1-drop life gainer when creatures enter. The one that comes back from the graveyard as the spirit, I forget its name. But we can link that as well. It's a very good deck. Ferocidon does shut it down, but not many people are playing Ferocidons. This version's also not playing any Skyclave apparitions, so it's very linear in terms of creature attacking strategy, less interaction in this particular one. You'll see 22 lands, but really it's 24 with the Emeria Call edition. We then go to Azorius Control. Like I said, I largely don't run into this deck that much in the ladder. In the events, it's all over the place. So I know some people have commented that they're running into this a lot. Some interesting choices in this particular version. We're seeing the inclusion of Teferi Slows the Sunset in the 4-drop slot. Some Settles, Supreme Verdict as well in there. Wandering Emperor still very effective. Singular Teferi seems odd to me. I would never go to I would never play this Teferi over this Teferi unless I was already maxed out. So I would honestly say just shift this number to this Teferi. Play 3 of these, don't play this. This seems like a very odd inclusion because you're not really untapping anything. There's no artifacts to really take advantage, so it's just kind of gain 2 every turn, which seems kind of odd, where this is just much better with your 2 mana counters, your Faithful Absence, March, whatever it may be. Some Absorb, Saw Coming. Sweeper package seems fine. Temporary Lockdown's an interesting inclusion. Notably, this kind of seems like a non-bow though, because if you look at it, you can exile with Portable Hole, and then you temporary lockdown and it exiles your Portable Hole, which again seems counterintuitive to be kind of playing in that regard. So you're probably better off just playing this as another either Supreme Verdict or another Fateful Absence, something like that. So some of these deck building considerations are a little odd to me. Farewell, Dream Trawler on the top end's pretty good. This can also be Shark Typhoon. I think given where the meta's direction is, one over the other, Shark Typhoon gives you a bit more flexibility, where Dream Trawler gets hit with your own Wraths. You have the flexibility as just a singular creature or an enchantment to kind of play around with that. Mono Blue Spirits. So this is a tempo kind of aggro deck. You're really playing spirits at various instant speed ideally. So stuff like Spectral Sailor comes in with Flash, Rattle changes protection and makes your spirits come in with Flash. You're basically trying to play on your opponent's turn as much as possible, like sinking mana into Ascendant Spirit, counter spells, stuff like that. We're seeing Fading Cope in this version, some Slip Out the Backs for protection, Spell Pierce, Lofty, Geist Snare. Some of the versions have also included the new enchantment from the most recent set that does a very similar effect in terms of drawing cards as copies 5 and 6. The one that does legendary, I forget the name offhand, but that's another consideration from Dominaria if you want to include that in there. But if you like tempo style decks, there's a lot of, this is a deck that's probably got a bigger range in terms of people playing it well versus people just not playing it well. Some games you're just going to run away with it. You're just going to have the counter spells, but tempo decks usually take a bit of practice. Your creatures individually are very weak, but it's the synergy of all of them. It's knowing when to counter something, when to tap down something, when to block, when to not block, kind of all played into it. So this is definitely a deck, this and Rakdos Sacrifice, which we'll feature next, that do require a bit of practice to get really efficient at them. Moving in, we see Rakdos Sacrifice. This was a deck that we played a lot of Explorer last week. And this was a deck I was very impressed with in terms of just attacking the meta. Claim the Firstborn into a bunch of Collected Company and Weenie style decks is very good. You have a lot of ways to enable Fatal Push in this deck, which is efficient. You have Village Rites, Deadly Dispute. That also pairs to Claim the Firstborn as removal. A lot of card advantage. Omnixus, Mayhem Devil, Fable, all really impactful cards. I'd say the Greasefang matchup's pretty bad. You don't really interact with them other than the Fatal Push. or some well-timed Mayhem Devils, which requires a bit of setup involved. It's not unwinnable, but it was a tough matchup from past games that I've played with it. This deck's also relatively budget. This, like all commons, uncommons, a common, uncommon, 1 mythic, 2 rares, 2 mythics, and then just the mana base. But the thing is, with this mana base, if you build like this mana base, you can also play well into Rakdos midrange. A lot of the standard decks also use it. So this Rakdos midrange is really flexible in terms of what you can do with it. Picking up, like if you have the Pain Land, Sulfur Falls, you can also add in some of those to the mana base. So you have some flexibility even with a lot of the standard legal cards in here. And then lastly, mono green Stompy, 55% win rate. So this is kind of the turbo henge version, playing 4 henges. Really just trying to like get turn 3 henge, turn 1 dork, turn 2 5 power creature, turn 3 henge, go to town. Got some companies, Graveyard Hate and Scavenging Ooze, all kind of mixed into there. Notably, this is not a Blizzard Brawl version. You got Primal Mites as your removal spell. And then Mana Sinks of Ronus, Werewolf Pack Leader, and Scavenging Ooze. You can also Mana Sink into the Lair of the Hydra as well if you flood. So that's it for the meta breakdown. If you are interested in playing in a free Explorer tournament, Hollywood Pizza Box Open, another content creator, hosts 3 tournaments a month, various formats. This tournament on October 23rd will be Explorer Best of 3. I will be commentating on the final round of Swiss and the top 8. So if you want to play, it's got $250, not 250,000, 250 USD cash prizes, free to enter. I'll put the link in the video description. If you want to join in, we got 34 of the 128 already enrolled right now. If you want to just catch the coverage live, it'll be on his Twitch page, and then I'll link that closer to as well. So if you want to see me commentate, if you want to play, if you just want to catch some tournament Explorer magic, jump in. And then I'll do a separate video. It was just announced that they're going to be doing a remastered set of Shadows over Innistrad, one of the Pioneer legal sets that hasn't been brought to Arena yet. So I'll cover some of the cards that we'd be looking forward to in that in a separate video. In any case, thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you have a great one and stay safe out there.